Hi, my name is Phil. I like talking about politics, and quite a lot of people have been asking me why it was that MPs didn't decide the outcome of Brexit or what they wanted from Brexit before triggering Article 50. So let's recap. Parliament yesterday were voting on a series of possible and impossible outcomes for Brexit. They've come to no agreements as yet. They haven't even decided to agree on reality. Now, the government negotiated a deal that was agreed by the other 27 member states, but not their own parliament. Now, I still can't get over that. How does any government attempt to negotiate an arrangement that won't be passed by their own parliament? Now, it's one thing to be out of touch with the people, but to be out of touch with your own legislature, your colleagues, is absolutely amazing. And I know some will say that it was impossible to negotiate any withdrawal agreement that would have got the approval of all of her party. Yes, this is true, but that's not what she needed to do. All she needed to do was to get the majority of Parliament to agree. And there were versions of Brexit that enough opposition MPs would have approved of. She needed to be Prime Minister rather than simply the referee between the two wings of the Conservative Party. Now, had the government been putting the country first, they would have negotiated such an agreement and faced down their rebels. But then if they were putting the country first, this process would never have begun. So, given that Parliament hasn't just declined the agreement on offer, but can't even decide on what it does want, the question has been asked many times, why didn't Parliament agree its position before triggering Article 50? Well, the sad truth of the matter is that it's simply because most MPs hadn't the faintest notion of what was involved in what they were voting for, just as many people didn't. If you think it's sad that there are still MPs who are deluded about the realities of Brexit now, there were many more of them 2 years ago. Even the majority who felt that Brexit was going to be bad didn't realise just how complex the process was. They assumed that because Article 50 gives an initial timeline of 2 years to complete it, that it's a 2-year process, even though it's an even more complex scenario than agreeing trade deals, which can easily take 10 years. And this isn't just about negotiating a withdrawal agreement. We haven't even been able to sort out our statute books in time. Now, bear in mind that politicians require no training or qualifications, and the law is fairly complex. Frankly, most don't even understand the laws that they enact on a regular basis. But that's okay, because they have civil servants, those unelected bureaucrats that Brexiteers complain about all the time, who summarise things for them to help them out. So why didn't the civil service warn MPs about the reality of the situation? Well, the problem with Brexit is that it was taken to be an entirely political process. Their legal advisors were trying to warn them about the legal implications, and economic advisors were trying to warn them about the economic implications, but MPs simply ignored them because this was a political process and it was time for the politicians to get busy. Well, now we know what happens when you let politicians get busy. And I know it looks like our MPs are a particularly cretinous bunch, but it will be much the same in many other democracies, if not all. Legislators in most assemblies have their incompetence masked by the civil service. That's what they exist for. I'm quite sure that any nation's representatives would look just as dumb if they abandoned the protection of that civil service. Just look at President Trump. But he's not necessarily any dumber than the other legislators in the US. He's just one of the few that has decided to go it alone, speak off the cuff, and ignores the system specifically set up to stop members of that legislature from looking like morons. But okay, that might explain why most MPs would be dumb enough to think that they could all be done easily, just like the Brexiteers were saying. And some of them actually believed. But surely the Prime Minister was told the facts in no uncertain terms. Indeed, yes, she was. But this is where politics trumps everything again. She was facing massive pressure in Parliament to trigger it, especially within her own party, but Jeremy Corbyn was also calling for it to be triggered from day one. So she buckled under the pressure and submitted the letter to the EU Council. Yes, this was a reckless act of weakness, but she is weak. We know that from her actions since. Finally, one more factor in May's inability to deliver Brexit was that she decided to piss away her majority. When she triggered Article 50, she had a majority in Parliament. There were 330 Conservative MPs returned from the 2015 general election, out of 644 voting MPs. That gave them a majority of 14. Yes, not a huge majority, but a majority nonetheless. But she knew that she'd be facing opposition in her party and wanted to improve it. Polls were indicating that she was really popular and Jeremy Corbyn was useless at holding the Conservatives to account. So she went for another general election, even though she'd said no end of times that she absolutely would not. Now, the plan was not necessarily a bad one in theory. At the end of the day, you're riding high on the polls, the opposition's very low in the polls. Why wouldn't you? What the Conservatives failed to take into account was that Theresa May has all the charm of a pubic hair clog in the shower. She's fine in stage-managed events, but dreadful when unleashed upon the people. She tried to engineer photo opportunities that made it look like she was talking to crowds when the reality was rather different. So we ended up with a fractured Conservative Party, a fractured Labour Party, no agreed position, and inevitable chaos. So hopefully that explains why we did what we did and how it led to this. So I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, don't forget to click the like button, subscribe for further content, click the bell notification as well, and until next time, I'll see you later.